Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and as we start something new, we always find a sense of fascination, and that fascination when is visible in the form of a new kind of book where you have a lot of factors combining and giving a gift of a colorful book, What's My Amplitude, and there's another book, What's My Frequency. And the frequency match between a father and a son, when that is with reference to respected and a community friend, M.G. Prasad ji, who not only was passionate about Indian culture, he wrote several books, and he always looked innovative ways to connect new generation with the essence of Bharatiyata. That passion fortunately trickled down to his son Teju Prasad ji, who is joining me and who has been the man behind this gift. So welcome Teju ji, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I know you have also dabbled in several creative fronts. We'll come to the books, but I want you to share your memories of your father, whose books, Garlands and several other books, helped people sustain their connectivity with the essence of Indian philosophy. So, how was your rapport with him?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so much, so much to kind of consider. But first and foremost, his main area of focus was always education, in almost any way possible. And obviously that was his profession. He was a professor. Even his involvement with temples and the Hindu community at large was all done through the vehicle of education. That was his primary focus. Even when he would do a lot of rituals for people. For example, he would conduct rituals or he would attend rituals, and he always made sure to try and educate the people there as much as possible, and not simply just be, oh, okay, I'm doing this ritual and you're simply just watching, you're some spectator or something like that. Which growing up, it took me some time, because when someone's your father and they're always there, you don't realize what it is really when you're in that kind of moment. But then later on, when I started going to other rituals and things, and I saw like, wow, like nobody else is really even making this attempt. So
I just interrupt you quickly to share with our viewers that M.G. Prasad ji, his father about whom we are talking, he was coming from a scientific background. He was a mechanical engineer, and for 37 years or so he taught at Stevens Institute of Technology. So here is someone with a hat where he's connecting with his students on science, but he has equal, or rather a deep reverence for the scriptures, and so yeah.
Sure, yeah, and certainly his area of acoustics and sound, which is that's what his primary area of research was, and his primary kind of his mechanical engineering classes, he would make them very sort of a lot of tools to demonstrate things. Our house was filled with all kinds of sound making toys and tools and things and equipment and stuff, and that was all to make his classes and his lessons very, very interactive. And this area of sound was also very much, I think it tied into his kind of spiritual background and his area of scriptural study, because he gave quite a few talks on like the spirituality of sound, and how sound plays a spiritual component, a large spiritual component of Hinduism. Things like Vedic chanting and things of that nature. So for him, it almost seems like there was this big thread of science and sound and spirituality, but it was all connected. It wasn't really separate things for him.
So talking about science and sound and what you heard from him, as well as you experience yourself, and as we say, Om is the primordial sound, and when there was nothing, the origin also has something to do with sound, or you say frequency, or so. How you find overlap of space between our spiritual experiences and the sound as we know it, and conscious efforts that are, of course, a part of the tradition. But when you bring science also to play its role, then anything that comes to your mind in terms of some demonstrations that you saw from him, or you did yourself some experiments?
Oh gosh, let me. Yeah, there definitely were many. I mean, for example, he was a big fan of kind of blowing the conch shell. That was in doing the rituals. Actually, that was a big part of him starting any ritual, and even really any talk he gave as well. He would go. He's done many talks in different places. That was almost like his signature sort of way to begin a talk, was by blowing a conch shell. And again, our house was completely filled with conch shells of various sizes. And in fact, I actually remember he gave a demonstration once with, there's another sort of Jewish kind of horn, I think it's called shofar. And there was a talk where him and this shofar player were kind of going back and forth, blowing, the sound, making the sound from each of their instruments, which I thought was really interesting. That was something very unique, and kind of popped into my head.
He was actually very big in promoting interfaith dialogue also in his own way, and he would participate, as well as he was instrumental in organizing some dance drama and those kind of stuff. Moving beyond this reference to the overlap space of science and spirituality, when you look at yourself, what is it that you find yourself more appealing? Is it his scientific temperament, or is it his spiritual inclination?
Well, yeah, it's really hard to decide, actually. It's maybe because for us growing up, those two blended so intertwined. It was really hard to separate the two, because he really tried to give us as best as possible, sort of rational reasons for anything that he was doing in the spiritual world, and anything that he was doing in kind of the rational world. He always tried to offer some sort of philosophical meaning behind it. So yeah, I would say he really just, he really tried to combine them both as much as possible. So yeah, but I would say what was really unique was just going through some of these experiences with him in the religious community in this space, but seeing how he really approached it from a perspective that not too many other people could do. So
talk to me a little bit about some creative projects where you collaborated with him, whether it was stage production or maybe some documentaries, or where you interacted with him. Anything that comes to
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so towards I guess this was maybe 05 to like 2010, like that, in that time frame. I was a big part of a lot of the stage plays, the dramas that we had performed. That was actually also at Stevens Institute where he taught. Stevens has a really nice theater right on campus and a fairly strong dramatics program. And so when I was living outside of New York area and kind of came back, and so when I came back, this kind of opportunity presented itself, and we were able to form a group with our family and some extended family and friends and things to make a small theater group. And that's probably like the strongest, I would say, because I myself have very strong artistic interest in terms of film and theater and these sort of things. So I had written the scripts for some of those plays. I had done some of like the acting roles as well, and then my first documentary was actually a sort of a behind the scenes, if you will, of the first show that we did. This was back in 2005, called Utsava.
I I remember he would refer about your involvement with a lot of pride and joy, which you may not be aware how happy he was. So once you do not have that kind of a personality on the scene who would inspire everyone, though it seems very natural at that time. But when he's not in the scene in the physical form, then things don't sort of add up and come together, and you don't have those kind of events which were happening while he was around. Did you kind of felt a need to sort of walk on his footsteps in recreating some of those kind of vibes through events or documentaries, or have you continued?
Yeah, well, well, those are really large footsteps to to try and fill. But certainly, I mean, I think even a lot of people kind of came to me afterwards and asked me, will I continue this or that, or will I try, or will I also do any activities or these kind of things. And at the time there was really so much happening, and I needed some time for myself to kind of figure out what my next steps would be. And for me, I think it was a matter of looking at all of his activities, because they spanned such a range, and looking at what areas and what specific types of activities of those would I feel most comfortable myself, just in terms of my own knowledge base and my own kind of like interest and these kind of things. And yeah, so it just from there it's just been a slow steady march, and just kind of taking it everything day by day. We had a big book collection, for example. We had a huge book collection, so we spent all the time, almost 2 years actually, we spent kind of cataloging it, and we were able to make a donation to a university, and hopefully they'll make kind of a nice library out of it. So yeah, I'm happy that I've been able to kind of take some of these things and find a good place for them.
So talking about books, and the book that I have in my hand also bears his name, and mentioning that this is inspired by the life and works of Dr. M.G. Prasad. He specialized in acoustic sound and vibration, as you mentioned, and these are like educational products for children. Was there any discussion with him while he was around? So this book is called Watch My Amplitude, and this is very neat, very, very nice illustrations. So talk to me about the genesis of this book.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, so I guess the inspiration from it came where we had seen some other children's books, for younger children, infants, babies, that started to kind of cover some scientific concepts, and we looked through that kind of catalog, and I found out that, well, we saw that there really wasn't too many, there really wasn't anything that covered sound and acoustics directly. And so we had the just general idea of, hey, maybe we could take your research area, we could take these ideas of sound and acoustics and wave theory, so to speak, in a more general sense, and make some nice children's books out of it to illustrate these concepts, make a nice little story, make some characters, find some good, find a good illustrator. And our initial plan was to actually just kind of write the text, write the manuscript, and go around to publishers and see if any publishers would be interested in taking on the project. And we did a little bit of that. I mean, there was a little bit of effort in that direction. This was, I would say, sometime in early 2019, maybe late 2018. But then, as you know, in late 2019, he suddenly passed away. And after that time, the rest of us in our family, we knew we had this idea still kind of hanging there, and we as a family decided, okay, like we could just finish the project and self-publish ourselves. So in late 2019, kind of started the work, and looking, I finished the manuscript and looked for illustrator. Yeah.
Okay, so now let me come to the book looks very, very good. And if I was a child, then I would just pick it up, I'll turn all the pages and I'll be very excited. But as a parent, I'll see what is this book and I'll also try to understand. So it makes you happy. The colors and the illustrations are wonderful. But what our viewers are seeing right now on the screen say, here I'm a sound wave, I stretch up really tall. So when we see your name as author, we see, oh, you just wrote one line and you have mostly one-liners in most of the pages. But this must not have been easy. So what way you arrived at this sentence and what is being conveyed in this as per you?
Sure, yeah. So the real challenge in these types of books and this type of writing, I think, is trying to take a very large and complex concept and distill it into a small, little self-contained story. So that, the line that you read is, the intro line. So the idea is we're trying to introduce the character, and we're
trying. So you have personified sound waves.
Yeah, basically we've taken this nebulous concept of sound wave and we've made a character out of it, where the character has, a life and they're going around and they have friends and they have a thing that they're going to do for the day. So that particular line, I'm trying to illustrate the concept of amplitude by the physical act of stretching, right? So because that's something all kids can understand. And the setting of this particular book, this Amplitude book, is a school kind of music room. So again, this is something all kids can relate to, right? Because almost every kid that I know.
So let me just interrupt and let my imagination, as I realize reading some of the pages. So I can imagine a school, especially maybe young kids actually, maybe below 6'5", something like that.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. So when they will see this picture, today I will meet some instruments, time to make music, and you can hear the giggle of these kids. That makes me a high amplitude wave. So it will help kids in flight of their imagination, in thinking that they are talking to a sound wave, and that kind of stays for a long time. So I would like to compliment you on coming up with this kind of an idea. The sounds I make are loud. How about soft sounds? So these are so this sound waves. Is it like a continuity of a thread of thought? It concludes with some sort of a logic. Like in stories, we have something that is happening here?
Sure, yeah. So in this particular, in that book, for example, the idea is that the sound waves have to go meet the instruments, and then each instrument is only capable of producing a certain type of sound. So not every sound wave matches every instrument. So the idea is really, I think what I was really looking for in exploring that idea is that, hey, we're all different. And we all can't be high amplitude, we all can't be low amplitude, but everybody has value, right? So I was trying to show this idea of, we all have differences, we all have strengths, we all have, quote, weaknesses, but individually we can maybe only do one thing, but when these sound waves work together, by the end of the book, they make a song, and they perform the song.
So here it is, when the song is over, time to take a bow. So this is a very, very cute book, and let's quickly also share another one, which is What's My Frequency. So indeed it is a scientific book, but it also, the question itself is philosophy-oriented title, What is My Frequency?
Yeah.
Talk to me about writing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually the first book that we published. This was back in, I guess, in 2020, late 2020. And yeah, this one, we chose the setting of a farm with animals because, once again, every kid can relate to farm, animals, animal sounds. And we also, we wanted to show the differences. We wanted to show that, there's high frequencies, there's low frequencies, medium frequencies. And we wanted to illustrate the concepts of, when these frequencies work together, they, different kind of things happen. They harmonize, for example. So that's a concept we address in the book, is this concept of harmony, and the idea of waves, when they travel together, they actually build something that's more than just the individual waves together. And what you said is 100% right in the sense of the idea of frequency having a kind of a little bit of a deeper meaning, where a lot of times people will think of frequency as almost like their thought wave frequency, right? The idea of like, oh, I'm on a different frequency, or I'm on a higher frequency. They kind of mean it in a more spiritual sense. So so for that reason, this was the reason why I chose this book to be the first one, because it was so closely aligned with what my dad's life and mission and now legacy
So now let's look at your interaction with the illustrator. This is not very clearly visible, but the illustrations are quite neat and colorful, as well as I think they exuberate a sense of joy and cheerfulness. So
Sure, yes.
You were probably interacting with the illustrator, and let's say if you want to give us example of this first page, here I'm a sound wave, I wiggle really slow. So you had this line. Was there some editing done on what you wrote based on the illustration, or?
Yeah, well, so I did work with both an editor and an illustrator. So with the editor, it was a matter of choosing specific words and knowing how many words to put on each page. What's My Frequency was my first attempt at writing a children's book. And what's also important as what words are on the page is how they're distributed as well. So you can't have too many words on the page, otherwise it looks a little bit, you don't get to enjoy all the illustration. So the editor really helped with that sort of distribution of the words on how many words are on each page. Once I had that manuscript, I had given it to the illustrator, and I just told her my overall concept of, this is a farm and there's farm animals and their waves are characters. And she came back with a very kind of basic design template. And then from there we worked on, how to sort of define the character. And then we worked on, each page she gave me a little kind of thumbnail sketch that I would make comments on, and we would go back and forth. And then after that it would go to the final,
as they say, tapasya, or the hard work and labor of love has resulted in the form of these wonderful books for children, which are like treasures for them. Where can they find it? I think mgprasad.com is the...
So the direct website link for these two books is whatsmyfrequency.us. www.whatsmyfrequency.us.
And what has been the response so far? I think this should be definitely in the library, first of all the schools that are focusing on education of children. Plus, many parents may find this a worthy gift for small kids to be given. Yeah. So far, response.
The response has been great. I mean, a lot of people have taken to it, and a lot of people have been surprised even to say like, oh, I thought this was some deep scientific thing, but it makes it very understandable and very relatable. A lot of people even in the science community and the music community have taken it as a gift that they can give to people who are in that world.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What next, Teju?
Don't know as of yet, as such in terms of books as such. But I actually do have a feature film project that right now I'm in kind of the early stages, so I don't have too many details. But it's a kind of a full-length narrative feature film that I hope to make within the next couple of years. And actually, I really hope for it to really give a good idea of kind of how Hinduism has grown in the United States and the attitudes towards Hinduism in the United States.
Fiction?
Fiction film, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we, with lots of good wishes for your future project as well as success for this one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, Teju.
Thank you.
So Teju Prasad, the gentleman who has come up with this creative offering for kids, What's My Frequency and What's My Amplitude. And with gratitude for him and for you, this is Ashok Vyas. Namaste.